welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we go into May, I'm reminded of Mental Health Awareness Day, of course, month as we pay tribute, but also how far we've come since the 20th century, but also how far we still need to go. There's an African proverb I kind of use a lot, and it reads, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. I think about several organizations. One I used to, I'm still part of is like NAMI and National Alliance for Mental Illness. They'll start with mothers just trying to get better care for their sons coming out of state hospital. So it's just a reminder of, the simpler things. When it comes to mental health, a lot of times somebody asks, well, why do we care? And why would we care, especially if you're not touched by it? I kind of remind myself of, because a lot of times it could just be a coworker, the individual around us, and that's why last year I used this kind of title, remembering our names, because I think one of the most human things that we're given is our names. Today we have a new guest. His name is Jonathan Niziol. Is that right, or how do you spell it?
It's pronounced Niziol, but it's kind of tricky because it's not pronounced the way it's spelled, so don't worry about it. Everybody gets it kind of mixed up. So it's Jonathan Niziol, but thank you very much for having me.
No problem. I just want to quickly, before we begin, do a disclaimer. If you are in crisis, wherever you are in the world, I do encourage you to find what resources, what support there are. But if you're in the States, 9AA is a suicide crisis lifeline. I do encourage those who are in need or are facing crisis to find help now. It's hard for us when we're adults to say I need help, but I do encourage you to find that help, whatever that is. I don't like reinventing the wheel, but thank you again, Jonathan Niziol, to come on and be part of the conversation. With mental health, is a lot of times we have to have a month to remember, because life is so busy right now. We forget we're always doing something. So I want to start with a quote. When I was growing up, Mark Twain was something I read, and it says, kindness is a language which deaf can hear, but blind can see. When you think of mental health, and at least from your standpoint, what do you think? Well, what does it mean to you? But also, what does this quote mean to you? Does anything stick out when you hear this quote or anything of that?
Absolutely. I mean, with the things that I've gone through personally with mental health and the other things in my life, I've learned to, first of all, understand that you don't know what people are going through. You can't judge a book by its cover. And I think that kindness or leading with grace is the most important thing. I think that we should be we should be quicker to extend a hand or lend a hand to somebody, as opposed to turn and judge them for whatever reason. I think it's, I love to have just a nice, pleasant interaction with a stranger, whether it's holding the door for somebody or just asking, somebody at a cashier how their day's going, or whatever it may be, just having a nice, kind interaction. And it really does go that much farther. It's a harder thing to do when you're in a bad place. And I understand that. I've been there. Misery loves company. And I totally understand that. But if you can, it doesn't cost you anything, and it can make your day, and it can make somebody else's day. And it's what the world's all about. It's what this podcast and us sitting here talking is all about.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. It's assumed that people know that they're appreciated, but they're not. They don't feel it. I could be an excellent at musician. I like music, but I could be an excellent pianist, but I would not know it if someone doesn't tell me. It doesn't, like, for a lot of times we don't feel appreciated. And you mentioned just even like, cash register, or if you're at a store, a lot of people tell me, I don't have time to do all this volunteer. Well, just be kind to the people you're around. You go to a restaurant, they get your order wrong, pause. I know it's harder to do, but these are the kind of little steps we can do to be kind of, because we, like you said, we don't know what they're going through. I think Robin Williams says it this way: everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. And Robin Williams is just, I think, a staple to what you're saying also, because I remember him when I was growing up. He was just always so jovial, comedic, and there's something about the people that we have in our friend groups that are always the life of the party, the ones that are always there for their friends, those are sometimes the ones you have to kind of reach out and say, "Hey, I really appreciate you." Well, maybe the people if this person has it all together, not necessarily true. A lot of times we like to, at least I could reflect from my experience. It's good to kind of get distracted, but sometimes our distraction is our avoidance. So in your reading this quote and what we've talked about so far, is there anything else you want to add, Jonathan, or even anything you want to add, or go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I think you touched on a number of really important things there, and I think that everybody deserves your respect. I don't care if they're delivering your DoorDash. I don't care if they are the owner of the company you work for. I don't care who it is. Everybody, or if they're on the street, you don't know what they've been through. Everybody deserves your respect. And I think everybody deserves equal respect. There's no such thing as a nobody in my life. Everybody's a somebody. And I also believe a lot, like you said, if somebody gets your order wrong, or let's say like driving, for instance. I used to have really bad road rage when I was an alcoholic and I was miserable and stuff like that. And now if somebody does something, I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're not great at driving, but maybe they're great at doing taxes or something that I'm not good at. It's like, hey, okay, cool, man. Like, we all make mistakes. That's another important thing to remember too, is we all make mistakes. And like Rob Williams said, we are all fighting battles. I mean, I've been that person. A lot of people are that people or been that person, but being an international model and personal trainer and all these things, and people seeing me and be like, oh man, there's Jonathan, the guy who's traveled the world and modeled, and but behind the scenes, I was clinically depressed. I was, I was a drug addict. I was all these things, but I could put on I said, I'd be like, and it isn't until recently that I've started talking about it. The people who I knew at those times were like, man, we had no idea that you were going through any of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I was good at faking and lying. Like I was good at faking it. So it is very important to check in with everybody, and to know that you don't know what people are going through, and to treat everybody with respect.
Yeah, and another element to that is, I hear this a lot in mental health communities, is not being heard. Just, like, for instance, we have this assumption the person looks like he's doing well, he must be doing well. Well, like you said, and a lot of us could be great actors, especially to those around us. We know how much not to say, what to say. You can look like you're doing well if you're just busy. And I feel like busyness can kind of be a mask to it all. I'm super productive besides my own self-care. Oh, he's so wonderful. He gets everything done. But the question I have is, how is she, not what he's done per se. And like you mentioned, people who are bad at driving. I also see people who like race past me, and cut me off. I'm like, I'm just thinking to myself, obviously, baser instincts is like, I'm upset. Why did he cut me off? But then I don't know what's going on in that car. I don't know if that person is just trying to get to the hospital. I have no idea. We're just hoping that at the same time, it's easy for us to just respond by our baser impulses, but I think it's that duty to kind of do better, not only to yourself, but to others. And I think that is kind of the hope. I don't expect people with mental health issues, myself with mental health issues, to be understood. I don't it's such a hard thing to explain your way. It's a tiring process because no one will really understand what you're going through, but you can still get support. You can still get the support you need. Definitely. I think Maya Angelou said it really eloquently, and she says, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that kind of goes to the people who are, I don't know what to say. Just be there. That's the idea that you're there. I don't even saying I don't know what to say can be comforting because they know that you're being present. You're trying the best you can. At least from my experience. Anything you want to say along those lines, or anything you want to add, or anything that we've spoken before that you want to also add or anything like that.
No, I totally agree with what you just said. I've literally, in the last couple of weeks, said that to one of my best friends. She's going through some stuff, and life's very overwhelming, and I was like, I don't know what the right thing to say right now is. And she's like, that was the exact right thing to say. Like,
Yeah.
That was exactly just the fact that you're here, you're listening to me, you're genuinely there, and the fact that you could admit, and I don't need you to say the right thing, just be there for me. And another thing too is, like, people will show you who they are if you let them, if you pay attention, like for good or bad. And I think that's an important thing, because a lot of times we bat away the red flags. They come and they're like, oh, nope, yeah, we're just. And it's important to really pay attention to people who they are, like to pay attention to who people are, and to surround yourself with people who are doing the right things symbiotically for each other's lives, not just taking, not just giving. It's a very symbiotic relationship. And something else you touched on too is all that glitters is not gold. You see all these things, and you open up your Instagram and you see a 21-year-old with a Ferrari, and you're like, where's my Ferrari? Why don't I have a Ferrari?
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. We don't, like, whatever. It's really important to just stay focused and just, focus on our lives and getting through our lives and taking it one day at a time.
Yeah. And, there's been this, I guess, concept that I kind of spun from, the line of work I do, but also just experiences, is the idea of, if, let's say I play basketball a lot in high school, all that stuff. I wanted to be in the NBA, and that's my goal, is to be an MVP NBA player, and that's it. The problem with that, only one or two things will happen. It won't happen. One, and the second one, I feel is more tragic, is that you begin to hate basketball. So the idea is this: the process is important. So I feel, whatever you're going through, it's not just, the goals are, markers where you want to get to, but the habits, the micro habits, something you do every day. Did I get up today? If it's a rainy day and I want to, like, be active, I just don't stop there. I try to think of other things, but at the same time, giving yourself that self checkup, and that, I need to take care of me. So it's not just saying the things that everyone wants to hear, but also saying the things no one wants to hear. I'm not doing well. So it is a tricky thing. So the kid, 19-year-old with a Ferrari, like you said, who the hell cares? Who knows what that person is? Like, it's subjective. Like, what is success for me? Well, maybe it's just getting, when you're really in crisis, it's just getting through this day, just getting through today. That's it. When you're getting a little bit better, the what next get a little more complicated. Well, I did so many wrong things. I messed up so many things, so many relationships. Well, what can you do today? What can you do to take steps today? So it becomes, I think, when it comes to value and going through that process, it's not racing to the goal, but embracing the process, the good, the bad, the ugly, but also, that you kind of get some more insight about yourself and what direction that will be. That was long-winded. I apologize for that, but I do want to get to you, Jonathan. I always like to give a little moment in the middle of, while we're going through this, about yourself. If you want to share anything to those who are listening, I will plug anything that you would like to plug in the notes. So anyone wants to check out anything that you're up to, they can do that. But I just want to give you a few minutes to share what got you to where you're at today, and anything else you want to share about mental health that matters to you.
Yeah, that's a big question. I spent the better part of 20 years struggling with mental health issues, clinical depression, severe anxiety, panic disorder, and self-harm. And that was brought on by losing my mother very suddenly the day before my 21st birthday. And that just completely rocked my world. I started to self-medicate, became an alcoholic, got very sick with a really bad case of acute pancreatitis, and had to go to the hospitals, and in there for a month, and just under a month, had to have 5 blood transfusions, and lost 40 pounds in 2 weeks, and almost died twice. And I thankfully quit drinking. I've been 16 years sober from alcohol. But I didn't deal with the reasons why I was drinking. So you said it in the very beginning, you talked about distractions, and I've lived a life of distractions. Whereas, it went from alcohol to then fitness, to then traveling and modeling, to then drugs, and, so on and so forth. And I realized after about 15 years of doing this that it wasn't working. But having said that, though, I'm now at a place, and the reason I can be on these podcasts, like be on your podcast and do podcasts and talk about this publicly, is because I've actually learned to forgive myself genuinely. And this isn't this is probably within the last 13, 15 months that I've learned to genuinely forgive myself. And I forgive myself for the things that I've done in the past that I've taken that haven't really been the most productive, because I was trying my best at the time. I didn't have the tools. I was doing my best. Do I wish I had all the money I spent on drugs and alcohol back? Yeah, I do, because I could probably buy my own Ferrari. But I forgive myself for that, because like I said, I was trying, and I forgive myself for the things that have happened in my life that were out of my control, because those are unfortunate facts of life, and that's a part of life. So I've gotten to the point now where I'm very comfortable with who I am, and I'm very proud of who I am, having been through all these things, and I want to constantly keep learning and growing. That's why I love coming on programs like yours, where we're having this conversation and connecting with people and learning from other people. I love when people reach out to me and continue the discussion, because I don't think I have it all figured out by any means. I'm just some regular dude just trying to get through life, man. Like, throw me some lifelines here. So if you guys have so that's a brief thing on my background, I guess. There's a lot more to it, but that's just a brief summary of it. And like I said, I love to keep learning, and you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. I'm most active on Instagram, but Instagram, TikTok, YouTube is my name, and then my website and my Facebook page are Jonathan Niziol Official. But yeah, I'm just a regular dude trying to get through it. Been through some stuff, and am just trying to share my story and help other people, and help make the world a better place by helping myself, first of all, to be the best person that I can, so I can then be a better person for the people around me that I love, and then for the world and society. And that's just what I want to do, man. So
yeah, and I think it's inspiring when you get to that level of understanding. Forgiving yourself is really just being able to let go of what happened and process it in a way that you could be more present and more, be the best self you can be without holding on to this guilt and shame that honestly you understand certain things you would have liked to done differently. However, it's not going to help you to hold on to it now. Forgiveness allows you that avenue to kind of heal. All of us have made mistakes in our life, and I'm not trying to, but I do commend you on that, because recovery became my healing, and also helping others became my it's the kind of this circle. I do find when I first started the podcast, I was just like, I wanted to just get people to share their story, because a lot of times the biggest thing that people will say is that I don't feel heard, and this was a platform for that. And I also want to say, when it comes to healing, it's you never really get there. It's kind of like one person said to me, it's in the sense of completeness. We're always unfinished in our stories of life. We're always kind of processing. Our lives are one thing to another thing, but when you enjoy the process, like I was trying to explain with the basketball, you begin to just enjoy the process, and the process is just sharing like you are. I do want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of times people think that, I think it's always good to, to be able to connect with others, but also to connect with yourself and to be honest with yourself where you're at. And a lot of times there's also inspirational quotes that when I think about, especially what I've been through, and just thinking of the level of like, it's been years that I feel like could have done better or could have done differently. And I remember this person, Nito, it says, your present circumstances don't determine where you go. They merely determine where you start. A lot of times we kind of get stuck on what we've done, but in the practical side, we just get stuck. A lot of times, at least people struggle with negative, negative recurrent thoughts. You may be correct, but you also are stagnant. You could be paralyzed by what you've been through. However, with therapy and with treatment, but also being aware of them, and also having ways to be cathartically. I always feel like hobbies are helpful. I work in the mental health field, so you have to be kind of creative in your in your ways of answering questions. I think questions are creative. I think curiosity is healthy. I think being curious about ways you can kind of navigate through your mental health issues is, I think, sometimes most effective, because you yourself have unique ways and unique things that you may respond to more than others. And I think curiosity kind of helps with that. Another person, Brienne Brown, says it this way: vulnerability sounds like truth, feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. I think a lot of times we kind of denote, like, when you're vulnerable. I think I've gained more insight from me being vulnerable, looking at myself in the mirror and saying, this is where I'm at, and then moving and trying to do better the next day. So, and I just wanted one more quote, and then I'm going to ask your insight, what you thought of these quotes, but also anything else you want to add. The strongest people, I like this quote from Jonathan Harnish. He says, the strongest people are not those who show strength in front of the world, but those who fight and win battles that others don't know anything about. So, of the quotes that we mentioned, anything else you want to mention? Mental health, and I want to also caveat, if there's anything we haven't said about mental health that you think should be said. It's 2024 May, Mental Health Awareness Month. We do this every year. Anything else you want to add to it that we haven't discussed, or anything you want to just emphasize a little bit more? The floor is yours.
No, I think those quotes are spot on. One of the things that I've learned is vulnerability is not weakness or shame. It's power. The more that I talk about the stuff that I've been through, and not necessarily in a public format like this, and I don't think anybody's better or worse off for doing this. Not everybody should be on a podcast and talking about it and stuff, but being able to talk about it and being able to open up and be vulnerable is something that I was very afraid of for the longest time, because I was ashamed, and I thought people were gonna look at me differently in a negative aspect or negative connotation, and it's quite the opposite. And I also agree too, is those are the most important battles that I've fought and won and continue to fight are the battles that nobody knows anything about. I'm a very insular person. I'm very much withdrawn and stuff like that, and I still put on the happy face and that kind of stuff, and it's just in my nature to be that kind of way. But I think that's a very important thing, and I think that also goes for the way you treat other people, like the things that you do when nobody's keeping score or nobody's keeping track. Like kindness just for the sake of kindness, not because you're going to get something back from it. Or it's I think that goes hand in hand. So no, I think those are great things, and I think that, like you said in the beginning, that we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go, but we are on the journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And just remember that there's never been a perfect person that's walked this earth. There never will be a perfect person that walks this earth. Don't compare yourself to others. Just try and be the best version of yourself that you can. And that's a really important thing. It's a hard thing to remember, especially with all the exterior stimulus and the stimuli that we have in social media and just in general. And it's something, it's hard for me to remember on a regular basis, because as a international model, I'm competing for jobs, and if I don't get them, I'm like, what's wrong with me? Must be something wrong with me. But I've learned how to push past that, but it's I think mental health is the most important type of health, and health in general is mind, body, spirit. You can't ignore one of them and focus on the others, or anything. I've spent years where I focused on just the body, and my mental and my spirit just dwindled. And it wasn't until I learned that it's mind, body, and spirit, and taking care of whatever spirit means to you with your whatever. It's not a religious way. It's just a, just check in with who you are and be true to who you are. So those are great quotes.
Yeah, and you mentioned before about forgiveness. And one thing I forgot to mention is we can only really be kind to people when we forgive ourselves. Because we kind of put that same kind of same standard on ourselves. So we can't forgive ourselves. It gets more difficult. I'm not saying you can't be kind. It gets increasingly difficult to be kind without much barriers or restrictions. So at least from my experience, and also when it comes to forgiveness, it just helps in so many different avenues, and it's something that you just don't do once. You do constantly. You got to remind yourself that to forgive yourself, and then you will be able to more effectively communicate, and maybe forgive others too. That's a big step too. You're forgiving yourself, maybe the biggest step, but it'll be easier if you could forgive yourself before forgiving others, because it kind of is reflective. Obviously this podcast is not proselytized. It's about outreach. But one thing when I was a church leader was, how we view God, is how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves. So if I feel God's a vindictive, angry person, I'm going to treat myself and everyone around me the same way, and vice versa. So it's very reflective. We look at our parents when we grow up, when we first wake up, when we first were kids, we look at them as a model of what is good, at that point. So it is kind of parallels how we see the world sometimes. So it's important to kind of have that insight. So if we forgive ourselves, I'm not saying it's impossible not to be kind and not forgive yourself, but it may be harder. Can I say that much? There's a Chinese proverb that says, a bird does not sing because it has an answer, it sings because it has a song. So everyone, sometimes, you don't have all the answers, but I do feel that we all have this uniqueness. And I don't like generalizing. So if it takes you 40 minutes to get out the door, you have a bad day, it's going to be a bad day if you don't take this 40 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Don't say, oh, this shouldn't happen. Just do the 40 minutes. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? A lot of times we get stuck on the should-haves, and it doesn't help. If you know that this is going to be a bad day if you don't do these 40 minutes or 30 minutes of reflection or just something, even though it's inconvenient. Mental health is inconvenient. It is. At the same time, it doesn't mean that it has to stop there. So that's, and as I wrap up, I'm going to get your final thoughts. Is mental health, like I said, is complicated. So, but unfortunately, more than medical, a lot of times we identify ourselves to the diagnosis. Like we are this, not who we are ourselves. And that is where remembering names is very important, I feel, because the diagnosis just helps with treatment, helps with possible medications, but it doesn't really tell about you. So when we think about mental health, the reason why we care is the people who are affected, ourselves, our lives, our wives, our coworkers, our kids, whoever it is who is struggling with mental health. That is why mental health matters. Final thoughts, Jonathan, as we wrap up.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's really important. It's the unseen, but like I said, it's one of the most important things to make time for and to work on. Just the same way that, we can work on our health, our physical health or not. I think it's a really important thing to do. And like you said, it doesn't define you. It's a part of the story. It's part of my story. But it doesn't define who I am, and it doesn't limit me, and it doesn't, it doesn't dictate how my life is and what my life is going to be. I'm in control of that. I haven't been, and for many years of my life, but I'm at a point now where I'm in control of it. And yeah, I think it's the most important thing. And also being aware of being aware of others and realizing that we are all just, the one of the things that I learned about traveling and modeling and stuff is I'd land in London or New York or somewhere, and there'd be another tens of millions of people just trying to live their lives, and I'm like, oh man, I am an ant, a little grain of sand. I'm an important grain of sand, but I am, in this whole grand scheme of things, I am just a little part of this thing. And that's not to say that we're, insignificant and not important. It's just to say that, the world doesn't revolve around us, and to be aware of other people and to check in with others. And I think it's just important to have these conversations. I think it's really important to have these conversations, and to keep fighting those fights, and to know that it's the most important thing and the most rewarding thing that we can do.
I just want to also just emphasize, a lot of times I hear, feeling, you shouldn't live by your feelings. I agree. We live by our feelings, we'll probably have legal issues or something. But I would say this, if let's say, I was angry at you, Jonathan, and then I find out that, I was wrong. It wasn't that. But let's say my reaction was really disproportional. Don't dismiss it. That's my advice to people. Don't dismiss it. Ask yourself why you got so angry. Why you got so angry in the first place? Because that can, a lot of times, just because feelings are not factual doesn't mean they're not useful. Because that shows a little bit inside what you're going through, and maybe something that you may want to maybe talk to someone about, maybe get some help on. Because a lot of times it's just, it's not true. Well, feelings are based on how you're feeling within. So if you're feeling angry, all of a sudden, maybe you should talk to someone. Maybe you should see if this continues and it becomes more of a problem. Maybe you should get some help. And that's what I like to say. And it's okay to get that help. It's just, unfortunately, when feelings can be an indication, but it's dismissed so quickly because it's not truthful, I feel that that's a big kind of disadvantage, because that could be a sign that something else is going on. Does that make sense? So I just want to say thank you so much, Jonathan, for just sharing all your insight, continuing the conversation, and just being part of this.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoy having conversations like this. I really admire what you're doing with your platform. I appreciate having the opportunity to be on here and to have this conversation. And keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, remember, stay updated with Revive Ministries through the various platforms. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries. Leave me his last quote. And before I do, I just want to say all the information on where to find more about Jonathan will be in the notes. We'll add that in the notes if people want to follow you or whatever, if that's okay. And I just want to share the last quote. It's from Malcolm S. Forbes. It says, "Too many people overvalue what they are not and undervalue what they are."